That's right. As the real estate industry becomes more and more challenging in this shifting market, as real estate brokerages continue to post losses quarter after quarter after quarter, the National Association of Realtors, however, want to increase the fees that they charge real estate agents. A recent report says that to cover an expected budget deficit, super interesting. We're going to talk all about that. The National Association of Realtors Finance Committee has proposed aligning dues with the Consumer Price Index, inflation, increasing the likelihood of annual hikes. Super, super interesting that this is what the National Association of Realtors is considering. Super interesting. So what I want to do in this conversation is go through the report. I want to show you how real estate agents are responding to this. And I did a little research. I pulled up some tax filings from the National Association of Realtors. I did a little research on where they're spending the money. And we're going to talk all about that. And then you can be the judge on what to take from this recent news. So the article goes on to say that the National Association of Realtors will consider tying its annual membership dues to a measure of inflation at its board of director meeting this week. NAR's board votes on the trade group's budget proposal every year at this event. This is what the treasurer of NAR said. NAR ended 2022 with a strong financial position with record high membership. Don't forget that. We're going to come back to that. With that said, the strength will be tested in the next few years under challenging conditions. Our chief economist, Dr. Lawrence Yun, predicts an estimated 15% decline in membership over the next couple of years. As a result, the association anticipates an estimated $10 to $15 million budget deficit in the beginning of 2024. Now, remember those numbers. They're going to come into play here in just a minute as we start talking about some of this stuff. NAR ended 2022 with a record 1,580,971 members. The trade group projects membership counts of 1.5 in 2023, 1.3 in 2024. NAR's annual dues currently stand at $150, plus a special assessment for its consumer ad campaign, which is raised to $45 last year. To cover the expected budget shortfall, NAR's Finance Committee is proposing that per member annual dues be increased. This is to cover the CPI as a measure of inflation. And now here's my first issue with this. Inflation is too much money in the market chasing too few of goods. That is the cause of inflation that has been going up. Why NAR would associate realtor member fees or dues to be in line with CPI, I have no idea, because we have the exact opposite of what inflation is. We have the opposite problem. Our sales are going down. And so they would have been better off raising fees in a time of inflationary as home sales were going up. Over the last couple of years, it would have made more sense for them to raise fees during that time, not when the opposite is happening. So that's my first issue with this. Now, before I pull back the curtain and we really get into this, I want to show you guys how some real estate agents are responding, and I want to react to this because it's some of the things that people are saying are like, I believe that they're spot on. So let me see if I can find these. Okay, so let me share my screen and I'll show you guys these. All right, so let's jump into this. One agent said, so the budget was set at NAR in line with the highest peak in membership and runs a deficit otherwise. Sounds like spending needs to be cut. 100% agree. That's why I said remember the numbers. They're coming off their best year ever. Let me put some context around something so that you know what we're talking about. I pulled their tax filings, okay? And let me pull this up so you can see. The latest tax filing, which is also interesting, was from 2020. And they did over $300 million in revenue, ladies and gentlemen, of which they had a net income of almost or just over $24 million. How they have a net income or a net profit when they file a 501c, which is a nonprofit, I have no idea. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I'm like right in line with what that agent said when he said, sounds like it's just a spending issue. Well, then I started thinking, well, that is interesting. Where are they spending this $300 million? And it's actually more. It's actually more as of 2022. That was 2020. And based on what the treasurer said himself, they're coming off their best year ever. So where are they spending this money? I'm going to show you guys in just a second. I found it. So they're coming off their best year ever. The entire industry is taking a hit, but NAR is saying, well, we like these numbers. We want to stay at these numbers. So we're going to increase. I don't know about that. We're going to see where they're spending their money, and then you guys can determine what should happen. Another agent said, running a deficit, it sounds like they need to adjust staff and services to match the reduction in membership. I would think that would make sense. Another agent said, the board of directors do more with less. Pull your members on where you think you can cut costs. Agreed. We understand the challenging members are facing, and we are committed to meeting their needs and keeping NAR financially sound. This sounds like something I'd expect to hear from a government bureaucracy, not an association or trade group. Given that MLS access is tied to realtor membership, does a real estate agent have any other options but to be part of NAR? So people are talking about that. There's one that's really interesting. Another agent says they should be fighting this class action lawsuit, which is, I've covered that quite a bit. All right, this is interesting. Another agent says, perhaps the $67 million ad campaign needs to be worked on. That is super interesting because my position on this, that I wonder, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's happening behind closed doors, but this has just been my experience, is that associations are more concerned with membership dues than they are the members actually succeeding. And to find out, you always got to follow the money, right? And I'm going to show you where they're putting this money. And then again, you can be the judge, because I get really concerned with this industry, and I made a ton of content on this point, that it actually goes against these trade groups' best interest to tell agents the truth, because they won't even get into the business. So, of course, they have a huge marketing campaign to increase membership. But my question is, why aren't they using that budget to help its members succeed? Because they're just playing to a high membership number. All right. Now, this is probably the most interesting comment. An agent said, I've always felt that the barrier to entry was purposefully low and easy compared to other professions. Just confirmed. It's not about quality of agents. It's about quantity of agents. Raise the fees to $10,000 a year, then let's see who can stick around. Top producing professionals won't like it, but can do it. Then they will make double their income because they won't be any part-timers picking up on these listings and buyers. Our industry would be such a better place perceived in the long run. That's a debate. That is more in line with what I think could actually help, is that could be another thing that we do to increase the barrier to entry. I don't want to talk about that in this episode. However, his comments are right in line with what I was thinking about, which was what is this association doing to help its members? Because I know they're doing quite a bit to help themselves. So much so that I said, okay, well, let's see where they're spending this $300+ million per year. So I looked at the tax filings and we start to dig into this. All right. So here we go. So this was, all right. So on compensation, they spent $60 million or 25% of their revenue on comp, paying their people. We're going to break that out in just a second. $49 million on primarily consulting. I don't even know what that means. Another 37, it was $67 million last year on advertising and promotion. And so when you go into this even deeper, it says, as illustrated above in both scenarios, about 80% of revenue was spent on compensating the 355 employees. 80% is just on payroll, including some very well compensated employees who received 7-figure compensation packages, paying consultants, advertising and promotion, office-related and travel conferences, including first-class travel and companion travel. It was also important to point out that NAR had $163 million in net assets, or what some people refer to as the general fund. Wow. Okay. Well, so when we start to look at that and we say most of the money, I mean, we're talking about, so 80% went to payroll. And then the second largest category was on advertising and promotion. Now, here's where I have questions. Wouldn't it make sense? So you just follow the money, right? Like what people do is proof of what they believe, not what they say. And there's nothing more true than that little saying when it comes to money. Like where people put their money is what people find most important, regardless of what they tell us. And so they have their money into paying their people. I'm going to break that down too in just a second, and how much money these people are getting paid to run this association. And then the second largest fee, 60 million, whatever the number is, into advertising. Now, I don't think it takes a genius to assume, okay, if these people cared more about the success of its members, wouldn't they allot a major budget into seeing its members succeed versus promoting to get new members who are going to pay us more fees? So that's why I always question these associations, like what their agendas are. Also, I don't understand how a nonprofit can have a $25-30 million profit. That's another interesting question that I would have. This general fund that's sitting on there's all kinds of reports out there when you start to dig in, but some say 160, 170, 180 million dollars in net assets just hanging out there for this general fund. I don't know what that is. But here's when I start to think about, okay, well, how could they help realtors succeed more than maybe what they're doing now? I go to education, but NAR, with all of this money that they're making, they still charge for all of their courses and all of their certifications. You go to the website, you got to buy them all. I don't know, call me crazy, but for me, wouldn't it make sense if you're running a nonprofit, a 501c, right? And you're running a nonprofit and you've got a $25 million profit and you've got $170 million in cash. Maybe it might make sense to, rather than well, just invest some of that money in its people, right? Just follow the money. I don't know. I don't know if they're doing that or not. I'm not sure. But then the next thing I started to look at is I said, okay, let's look at this compensation. Let's see how these people, because 80% of that money is going towards compensation. Well, we look at Bob Goldberg, who's the CEO. He gets $2.2 million a year to be the chief executive officer of NAR. The SVP gets $825K. General counsel, the attorney, gets $766K. Lawrence Yun, who's the economist, gets $665K. And then that brought up yet another question. And I said to myself, okay, well, how does this compare to maybe some other brokerages in our industry on how they compensate their CEOs? So I just made a little report on what I could find. And this is what I found, is that if you just put NAR up against any real estate brokerage firm in our country, they would, by the way, based on revenue of 2 years ago, they did more than this now. They would be the eighth, maybe they might even break the top. They might even beat RE/MAX and Keller Williams in terms of revenue, certainly in profit, because all these companies, even though Compass has $6 billion in rev, eXp has $4.6 billion in rev, Redfin has $2.2 billion in rev, their net profit, they're losing money. They're reporting, most of them reported first quarter losses. So profitability, NAR would be like one of the most profitable real estate companies, even though they run a nonprofit. It's super interesting. And then I look at their CEO compensation, and their CEO gets $2.3 million in annual income. And that is one of the highest paid CEOs in the entire real estate industry. And it just brings up more questions. And so, I looked at, his tax return is also public. Because they have to file like a 990 tax return. And so this is for 2022. And I won't get into all of that, but it's just, I don't know. I guess the word for me is it's just questions. I get curious. I get a little skeptical when I see reports coming out that this association that is coming off its record years in revenue, while its members are struggling to make it. They even said in the same report, and I quote, they expect, what's the number? NAR expects that membership counts will drop to 1.5 million. In other words, losing 80,000 members in 2023, and it dropping again to 1.38 million members in 2024. So rather than them saying, okay, what can we do? Like, this is the way my brain thinks, right? If I was the CEO of this company, guys, girls, people, what can we do to help our members succeed more, so that we don't have to do two things. A, we don't have to see the big dip in membership, which is causing us to consider raising the dues that we already charge our people. That'd be number one. What can we do to help our 1.58 million members win more so we lose less? And then two, as a result, ladies and gentlemen of the board or whatever they call themselves, then we don't have to spend $60 million on advertising. We can allot some of that budget into helping our members succeed more, keeping those members. And as a result, we would make more money and have our people be more successful. I don't know. Call me crazy. I think that's a win-win, but I don't know. That's what they're doing. They're saying, well, we're planning for these people to fail. So we already put the number on it. We're already planning for these people to get out of the industry. So we're going to pump more advertising. We're going to take more of the money that we make, put it into more advertising to bring more people in the industry. right? It's just a revolving door for us. It's just about membership dues. So we're just going to pump more members in the top of our funnel. We know we're losing a couple 100,000. Fine. We're not worried about them. We're worried about top line revenue. We're worried about top of funnel. So let's go market. We'll spend a huge, massive tens of millions on advertising to get new people in that don't know any better, right? And so we'll get them in, ride that train, and then, oh, by the way, we'll just charge more on top of it. I don't know. I don't know what day the meeting is this week. Hopefully we find out. And listen, at the end of the day, it's probably a big fat nothing burger as far as like what they're going to raise the fees to. It's just frustrating when we have an association that claims that their existence is to help its members. I don't know what their statement is, but I would imagine it has to do something with helping its members hopefully succeed. Well, why don't we put the budget that we're paying back into its members succeeding and less on maybe, I don't know, first class travel, $1 million salaries, multi-million dollar advertising budgets to get new members in? What about the current members? Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments below. We'll have a conversation about it.